there is some exemptions that apply if your work on a drainage system falls within the definition of a repair. So if you can document that you're doing a repair, you're not deepening, widening, modifying the system compared to what it was originally constructed as, you get exemptions that you can take advantage of, specific to wetland regulations, both the state and federal regulations on wetlands. So that record reestablishment process involves field survey. So a Houston Engineering field survey crew did go into the ditch, all 5.5 miles of it on CD9, collect channel bottom elevations, survey of it, including cross sections to collect that shape of the channel. And we also probe down or bored down through that sediment to identify the original constructed channel bottom of the ditch. You know, what we see in most cases is there's this kind of loosely consolidated black organic matter that's built up over time on top of the excavated channel. So we see this change in material from loose organic material down to more of a solid mineral soil instead of this organic dark soil. So that data, along with original design profile information from its establishment 100 plus years ago, we paired that data to determine what is the depth of the ditch along the 5.6 miles of its length. We also looked at the existing culvert crossings on the system too. So in terms of the condition of the County Ditch 9 system, based on our field survey, we saw sediment accumulated in the ditch. That depth varies to as little as 1/2 foot to 2 or more feet. So we also see vegetation or other blockages in the system. On the right-hand side, we see something on the middle to lower end of the main trunk where we see there's a tree or there's remnants of a tree there in the middle obstructing flow, causing water to slow down and affecting the efficiency of the system. Another photo of the main trunk, we see some sediment, high enough on the side of the bank that grass is growing on it. Perhaps it's part of the bank that's kind of fell into the channel slightly, but that certainly affects the width of the cross-section and efficiency of the system again. So we also evaluated those culvert crossings. There's a number of public roadway crossings, field crossings, and also private driveway crossings. So within our repair report, we did recommend replacement of 3 culverts as part of this project. I mentioned the wetland impacts earlier. So there was a number of wetlands that were adjacent to or very near to the repair activity, the excavation of the channel. So one of the things we're required to look at is how those might impact those wetlands. And we were able to demonstrate that there's no impacts in all but one location. This was on the very upstream end of the main trunk as it switches over from CD9 to CD14, just to the north of this screen. And we did end up buying 0.06, we had 0.06 acres of wetland impact. And that was working with the Wetland Conservation Act staff to make that determination, and there was a small cost to do the repair there to mitigate for those wetland impacts. So the opinion of cost that we provided in our repair report looked like this. So we had a total construction estimated cost of $440,000. That included open channel excavation and leveling of that spoil, managing that spoil that gets excavated out of the channel. That's the highest number you see there, second from the top. And we had clearing, I think roughly 7 acres of trees were cleared prior to that open channel excavation in the ditch. And then field crossing culverts and public roadway culverts, which is a cost put on the road authority. And we applied a contingency to that just to account for, unforeseen items and other factors that we don't see coming. And then estimated some other engineering admin and legal fees with that for a total estimated cost of $636,000. We bid the project, and we were lucky to have a number of bidders, 8 in total, to submit bids on this project. A number of them below our estimate, and a couple of them above that estimate, and some very near the estimate. So the low bid was Hellman Construction, and they had previously done work on both County Ditch 6 and County Ditch 3 within the last couple of years, and we were comfortable with their experience and qualification, so they were awarded the project at that bid amount of $297,000. A few photos of the work in progress. Here's some of the clearing of trees along the ditch, along a ditch. In progress on the left, and on the right is after the project, so a lot of the logs and stumps were chipped or ground down as required in the contract. Another photo there on the left of some clearing operations in place. On the right-hand side, we see a ditch. And this one actually might be from, I think I have some from CD14 mixed in here. But there's a ditch on the right prior to that excavation and clearing. And here are some example images of the ditch after the excavation. So you see we're restoring the original shape of the ditch. Neither are that deep in this case. Here is, on the left-hand side, it is a set of culverts going in. So one of the reasons to replace the culverts was either insufficient capacity, the culverts were too small, or they were set too high above the original depth of the system, which can happen. A lot can happen in the 100+ years when the system was originally built. Sometimes culverts are getting put in that didn't exist originally, and they're getting put in at the wrong elevation because they're just put in at where the where the sediment is at that current day, without consideration of what that original channel bottom was. So this one is actually I think a private driveway or private road at the upper end of the CD9 system. And there on the right, you actually see these old bridge abutments that we had to fit the pipes within. And that was a surprise there when those were found, because there was culverts installed between these abutments originally. And after photo, Chris had taken this photo in the spring of 2024, after things had greened up. And I think on the right side of this image is where the spoil was placed. Revegetated pretty nicely, and the channel is looking in good shape in this photo. And this was after a pretty wet spring. So in terms of overall cost from the start to the finish, going back to both the redetermination of benefits, record reestablishment and repair, and construction and wetland credit cost, the total was $496,000. So a ways below our projected cost within the repair report. And I think this is my last slide. No, this will be my last slide. In terms of the construction contract, we've determined that they've met the conditions, met the requirements of the construction contract. Things have been verified. The channel bottom, excavated channel bottom depths have been verified through field survey. And we found that they've adequately repaired the system. And the final payment of $16,606 be made at this time. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Joe. Members, any questions for Joe? Chris, you next.
So you've now heard engineer's report on the condition of the project. So now I believe it's appropriate to open up to any public comment on CD9.
Okay, before we go into public comment, commissioners, any questions for Chris or Joe for staff? No questions? All right, then we're going to open up the public hearing again and continue it. It actually continued. If you could please come to the podium and state your name and your address for our record, that would be great. And anybody that would like to start? Again, we're discussing the final repaired order for County Ditch 9.
So I'm, in the event that someone wants to speak, I'm gonna unmute Looks like, okay. Sure what is unusual. You just may have, Mr. Chair, you just may have to remind folks to unmute themselves if they
Okay.
want to talk, so.
If there's anyone online or on a phone call that's muted right now, if you'd like to speak, if you could please unmute and state your name and address for the record.
Some things here in the chat. We fixed that problem.
I think we fixed the audio now, so.
That was the issue.
Anyone online or on a phone call that would like to speak? Okay, Steve, we're getting you tuned up here a little bit.
Okay, I'm wondering now this redetermination of benefits, and I know redetermination of benefits, I get all that. But I'm still, it's just a way to spread the costs, and I'm still wondering about this 429 that says you have to pick up something in return for the special assessment. There's gotta be a special benefit also. And I'm wondering where that comes into play in this thing. This is gonna cost a lot of people a lot of money.
Michelle, could I lean on you? Are you familiar with what he's referencing in statute 429?
429 is a distinct process that is, 429 is a distinct process that is separate from the ditch process and assessment.
I can't hear her.
Get closer to the mic.
Sorry.
All right. 429, the process identified in that statute, does not apply to the ditch process. The ditch process outlines assessments in 103E, and that's where we find the power to assess the costs. It acts like a tax, and we follow that process, and we set a term, we set interest rates, and we collect that back through the property owners that benefit from this ditch system. So 429 does not apply.
You want to turn Steve back up to see if Steve, did you hear that?
It doesn't pay to argue this thing out right now, but, it does apply. It is a special assessment from my understanding. Am I correct in that?
It's a drainage system assessment, which is governed by 103E versus
It is a special assessment.
versus a road assessment through a city or other types of assessments like public works. That is distinct from this process.
What it was called was a special assessment by the county.
There are different types of special assessments, but not all of them are governed by 429.
Okay. Well, I can barely hear you guys. Doesn't pay to argue it out tonight. There will be another time, I guess.
Tonight will be the night that they adopt the assessment terms. So if you do have concerns, tonight is the night to present those.
Yeah, I definitely have concerns. I've talked to a couple different people that think 429 does apply, but I don't know that. For sure, I'm not an attorney. But 429 looks pretty clear. It talks about draining wetlands, which you're doing. I was sent a letter that said this is a special assessment. There is supposed to be a special benefit that goes along with a special assessment. So I will be arguing this.
Okay, thank you.
Whether they adopt it tonight or not, I will be arguing this.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Anyone else online before we move into the in-person audience? Anyone else online or a phone call? Again, if you'd like to speak, you're gonna need to unmute.
Looks like somebody.
Gary and Michelle, we saw your note. We'll unmute you here, see if that helps. All right, we've
Good
got you now.
evening.
Yep, go ahead.
This is Michelle Held and Oak Park. And I am curious about the follow-up from when the ditch is completed as far as the maintenance of the ditch. Are we talking about that tonight?
No, we're not talking about the maintenance assessment tonight. This is for the repair assessment.
Okay. So that will be another time we'll get a notice on that?
Should get another notice for a maintenance assessment when that's approved. I mean, if you have some general questions about it, that's fine, but there'll be no action about the maintenance tonight.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online or on a phone call that would like to speak? Just a reminder that you're gonna need to unmute yourself.
Or if they put the message in the chat, I think I can
Yep, or we can
unmute.
do the chat. We'll keep an eye on that if you decide that you'd like to speak. Move on to the audience. If there's anyone here that would like to speak, if you could please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Tim Cohen, thank you commissioners for coming. Address is 16648 65th Street, Oak Park. My ask for tonight is just get it on record or get it on file for the most part, not that I'm in agreement with everything that's taken place. Is that better? That's taking place, but when it comes to the terms of what's being done on Ditch County Road 9, or ditch number 9, I would ask or suggest that we have an interest rate of 2.25 interest. The reason I'm asking of that is the prime rate is at 4.5%, and I'm asking for a 20-year payback on the balances. That way it spreads it out and makes it more feasible for people to be able to pay it. Both parties, the landowners and the county, are invested in this action. I understand the landowners are responsible, but it also benefits Benton County to where the interest can be paid partially by Benton County, maybe not the fees, but the interest is why I'm asking of this. So basically on a $500,000 loan, and I just rounded numbers up, at 2.25% interest for 20 years, that's roughly, if the balance is paid out in the 20 years, that would be $120,000 of interest. But it'd be split between Benton County and the landowners to make it more feasible for the landowners, because there is a maintenance that's also followed up by this to where we're gonna be assessed again to keep the ditch going from 2 years, every other 2 years, from my understanding. That's my ask.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Did I see Ron next?
Excuse me, Ron Miller, 15880 75th Street Northeast, Oak Park. I guess I got some questions, and I'm trying to figure out how the benefits were determined. Because I get zero benefit, in fact, I might even be a negative. And why am I paying all this money when I don't get a benefit out of it? My land it splits between 12 and 9. So I'm really not getting anything from either one of them. On the little bit that it appears to be on the map, on 9, it actually runs into a kind of what I'd call a meadow, about the area of this room maybe. That's where the water on that area runs into, and it's basically, it's moss. It's like peat moss in that area. So it's like a sponge. It just soaks that water right down. So it's not going nowhere. It's definitely not going 1.5 miles to the ditch. It would have to go over a hill, over a berm, because there's a 50-foot berm between there and the where it's going to go to, supposedly going to go to. So how's it going to get past that berm? The berm is the size of this room, and it's 1/4 mile long, of trees and dirt and whatever that blocks the water from flowing. So it can't get there. There's just absolutely no way. And if it does go where you're saying it's going to go, that's up a steep hill from a wetlands. There's a 4-acre wetland there. So it's got to come out of that wetlands and come up a hill and over the hill and down about 3/4 of a mile to get to the ditch. I don't see any way it could possibly do that. You know more than I do, because I majored in accounting and minored in English, so I'm not an engineer.
Ron, can I ask you if you had an opportunity to talk with the viewers at all?
No, nobody's contacted. Well, Chris contacted me way back at the beginning.
Did you sign up to be contacted?
Yes,
And you did not get contacted?
I did not. And I really would like somebody to actually come and look at it. It says in the law that someone has to look at it. It says some can be done on computer, but you have to walk the land. And nobody, if they've done it, they've trespassed because they didn't talk to me about it. So I really feel like I'm being scammed here. It's a lot of money. I'm not gonna gain a thing out of it. And I know you're not talking about ditch 12, but the other side of my property is ditch 12. And if there was a possibility of any gain there, it's an acre, or maybe not even an acre, that's willows and worthless land. It's, I'm not gonna get any benefit. But there's, even on that one also, there's a culvert going across the county road. It's probably the length of this room away from the area. It's gonna go there, not a mile down the other direction, across the neighbor's field. So, and I've talked to Scott, I've talked to you before about that there's actually a ditch on my land that is, I guess, private. And it goes about 2.5 miles, goes across Danielson's, goes across Emslander's got some land there, it goes to the river. So that's, I guess, is apparently maybe is a private ditch. But you did replace the culvert. The county replaced the culvert about 6 years ago, I think, 6 or 7, because the road was washing out because the culvert was collapsed. At first, they just piled tons of crushed blacktop, recycled blacktop in, and even into the ditch to keep it from running, the road from washing away, because there was like 3-foot holes there in the middle of the road. And I was afraid I kept complaining because I thought somebody was gonna get hurt by driving into those holes. And after about a year of that, they finally just piled tons of stuff onto it. They filled up the ditch and everything. And after another 3 years of complaining, they finally come to replace the culvert. And it made a huge difference. Before that, my basement was flooding. I had 2 sump pumps running just about steady year round. Now, the last time it kicked in was back in September, I think, after the culvert was replaced. So I know the water's going to that culvert. It's doing something. And it's not going to ditch 12.
Christine or Beth, do we have the sign-up sheet from last meeting?
But I would appreciate if somebody could just come and look at it, actually be on, not just on a computer.
Did he,
Thanks, Beth.
the last one?
Last one, yeah.
Was he on the last one is what I'd like to know.
No, I don't, you weren't at the last meeting, were you?
I left, when you said you weren't gonna talk about night, I left.
Okay, so you didn't sign up for a phone call from the viewers,
Not on that one. I did like a year and a half ago or something, but
but not on the
earlier.
recent one?
Not at this one, no.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear about that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry.
Okay, anything else, Ron?
And at that time, Chris did call me,
Okay,
but that's all. Nobody's been out that I know of.
okay.
I'll get out of your way here in a minute.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Anyone else that'd like to speak that's in the audience?
Should have gave him the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can stand over the microphone if you want to.
Ron Schaefer, Oak Park. And I want to know who you have to see to get something done that was not done the way it should have been. Now that gravel road that runs by my place I'm on ditch 14, I think. And they redid the culvert there on the highway. But what they did is they dug down about this much deeper, and I can't get onto my woodlot there because I'd have to come off of the road, and that hill goes up like this, and you can't come down there with a tractor off the side of the road. And I talked to the township about it, and I says I wanted something done so I can get in there. On the other side, on the north side, they dug the ditch deeper, which I used to drive through. Now I can't drive through it.
Are we talking about a township road or the drainage ditch? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
It's a township road.
Okay,
That's my place.
okay. So that Are you on ditch 9 or ditch 14? Do you know?
Ditch 14, I believe it is.
Okay. You're on 9?
Which one is it? I don't know.
Well, I just need to clarify it because our discussion tonight is on County Ditch 9. But we might have an answer for you. 14? Okay.
Okay, am I doing it right then?
Well, we're not talking about County Ditch 14 tonight. We have another hearing scheduled in June for that. Tonight's meeting is for Ditch 9.
Well, before we get too far, I would like to say one thing about that ditch that is there. Instead of the water running out, it's running back and down the line that I have an interest in some land. It's feeding backwards. It's going north instead of south. And that's a big problem.
Okay.
And what do you do about it?
We haven't.
I stood on the road by the culvert, and I looked at it and say, hey, we gotta do something before we get a heavy rain.
I just want to make sure, Roland, that we're not mixing a township road ditch with a county drainage ditch. I'm hearing you say it's a township road issue.
Well, it's also the ditch. I told you we couldn't get across the ditch to the other part of my land
Okay.
where I got some firewood and I can't get there to pick it up.
Across the county drainage ditch 14.
Right.
Okay.
On the north side of that, it got dug about this deep.
Okay.
And there's no way you can get through a place where it's feeding that much water through.
Okay. So maybe we can
I
put,
did talk to the township about it, or whoever it was, I don't know. And he says, well, you gotta put a culvert in there, but that ain't my place to put the culvert in and haul some gravel in there so I can get over there. There's two sides, and the one is a hill where you'd have to put a lot of gravel or build a bridge across it. That's what I want to know.
okay. So can we get him on a list and we can verify what he's talking about? And if it's CD 14, we can follow up and see. But if it's a township road, then obviously we got to talk to our township officials. So we got you on a list to
Is
talk to
somebody
about.
going to talk to me?
Yes, can
Come
we
out
get
there?
can-
I would like it if he come out.
Yeah, and we'll give you a phone call. Do we have your contact information? Can we get your phone number?
I think she wrote it down when we came in.
Okay. Do we have your phone number? Okay, perfect.
Because the way it is now, it's really a bad situation.
I just want to make sure we're not mixing two different
No,
issues here.
no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mark? I think Commissioner Kapinski will just hand around a mic. It's easier for people they don't have to come up.
Mark Radka, address 16039 110th Street, Forston, Minnesota. I guess I have a question. Since we had the last meeting, we got another assessment, 14 did, that we have to pay a portion of the cost on 9, which I understand. But I also thought that the meetings were gonna get closed out when we had the last meeting, and the assessments went out for that meeting. And now since 9 got postponed, we got another assessment to help with the cost on 9, which I understand that part. But the question is, the money that, the assessment that us on 14 have to pay towards number 9, then the original landowners in the watershed on 9, their assessment should be reduced. Because we kicked in for it.
I believe, Joe, you touched on that a little bit. Could you maybe go to the podium and talk about that? You touched a little bit about that on the report.
Yeah, based on the viewers report for 9, 12, and 14, for every dollar that's spent on CD 9, 26 cents of it is paid for by CD 14, and 5 cents is paid for by CD 12. And that's the relationship between what the benefit amount is plus what for CD 9, those two upstream systems are assigned a benefit amount, and that's the viewers process that they use to come up with those numbers.
So they're not, I mean, to Mark's point, they're not really reducing CD 9's benefiting landowners. They're tracking the benefit that 14 and 12 are getting by outletting into 9. Is that a
Correct.
fair
Yeah.
statement?
Yep.
They're a contributor to number 9.
Right.
Is basically what you.
Well, they're outletting into it. Go ahead, Chris.
Mr. Chair, I think I understand Mr. Racka's question. So assessments went out for the initial hearing for 9 and 14.
Yep.
And then it was discovered that 14 and 12 contribute to that as well. So I think Mr. Racka is referring to, well, does that mean the original letters need to be modified? And should their assessment be reduced because now 14 and 12? And the answer to that question, unfortunately, is no. If we had only assessed for 9 based on those original letters, the ditch fund would have been short. And because the viewers' report took into account 12 and 14 already. If that makes sense?
Outletting into 9.
Yeah. So the original assessments went out to 9, and those numbers were correct to go towards this repair project. If 12 and 14 ditches did not contribute to those costs, the ditch fund would be short and we'd have a negative balance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of, because, so when we did the benefits on 9, it wasn't in the ditch 9 assessments, but they already counted 12 and 14
Yeah.
into the cost of the repair.
So, yeah, the way the viewer's formula worked is those letters for those landowners within the 9 only system already assumed, let's say, that 12 and 14 were contributing to the costs.
Okay.
Michelle, you got a
Yep.
comment?
So the viewers had the option.
Can you come to the mic, please? Because nobody can hear you, sorry.
All right, the viewers could have listed each individual property owner from ditch 12 and ditch 14, but instead of redoing that process, they just allocated a percentage.
To the,
And that percentage was reduced from the overall, and then the ditch 9 that were listed on that viewer's report, their percentage accounted for ditch 12 and ditch 14's percentage. So 29%, I don't know what it is for ditch 12, but if they had listed all of those individuals from ditch 12, they would have had 29% of the cost, but they chose not to. But it doesn't impact who was actually listed and their percentages, if that helps clear anything.
But it does, but I think the confusion's coming that they got the ditch 9 assessment, and now they got the ditch 14. And, Mark, you got land on both ditches. You don't?
No.
Okay.
He has 14, which benefits to 9.
Okay, and now he got the cost to do or 12 gets cost out to 14, and you get an assessment.
14.
14,
14 to 9.
So does 12.
yeah.
But we had the meeting to close this out, but something wasn't done right. So is this what
So-
wasn't done right? Because it's not adding up. You look at the dates on our assessments. The first assessment that we got is January 8th. And we had a meeting and we were gonna close out 9 and 14 then. And then it got postponed, 9 got postponed. And then here, February 10th, us on 14, sounds like 12, got another assessment. Okay, so that other assessment, if we were gonna close it out on the 8th, then your numbers were already figured out. So being that we got another assessment, us on 14 and 12, to contribute to 9, then the original assessment of the property owners on ditch 9, their assessment should be less.
So,
I think the
Mr.
problem
Chair.
is we have ditch 9 assessed already at my home place. That ditch 14 assessed on my farm in Oak Park. Then, after we had the meeting, I got assessed on 9 at Oak Park also. Again, afterwards.
Yes.
9 was
Correct.
done.
That's what I'm
Were
talking
you
about.
short to begin with?
You look at the dates of these assessments.
Right, you also, and if you look
Yeah.
at
You know,
it, you're
I
gonna-
know where
It's
they're
a-
coming
After the fact.
It's a notification issue. So when the assessments went out, assessment, the letters and notification went out for ditch 9, and the letters went out for ditch 14 for those projects. When the 9 letters went out, letters to 12 and 14 should have gone out as well. And so
Identifying the
that's
outlet.
why the hearing got continued to today, is to provide proper notification for 12 and 14 because of the work on ditch 9.
So, I heard Joe say that if we did the assessments on ditch 9, or maybe it was Michelle, that there was a negative balance, and the negative balance was because we didn't bill for 14 and 12, correct?
Well,
The property owner's assessment. So 9 was sent out, and if everybody wrote a check for 9, we would have been still short the amount of money that it cost to do it, because the
because 12 and
12
14
and
were not
14
notified
were not
to-
notified, and they were figured in the cost of the benefit.
So when was 12 finished?
12 is not.
Then why are we paying for it?
I'm Frank Danielson. I'm on ditch 12, 14 and 9. Address is 15901 65th Street Northeast. I was surprised too when I got a letter for outlet benefits. And that's what you're talking about right now, is outlet benefits. It was very confusing not to have them added into the original assessment.
Yes. Right.
And I think that was a big mistake, because I didn't understand what they were. I went back to my redetermination of benefits, and it was listed in there, outlet benefits. And it's like, well, why didn't that just get added into the repair costs? Because that's what we were here for a month ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you had to send out a separate assessment for outlet benefits when they were in the redetermination of benefits.
I believe, Frank, if I understand Michelle and Chris correctly, it was an improper notification.
Yeah,
It was
but
a
it should have been
notification
in
issue.
the original assessment. As far as the repair.
It was just a notification issue.
Yeah, but I mean, I got a repair assessment, and then I know that when we were here for that meeting, it was postponed because the notifications didn't go out. But I also didn't realize that outlet benefits were part of the repair, and, which they are.
Go ahead,
I
Michelle.
think the confusion is you must own property
She's gotta
on
step
ditch
up to the
12
mic.
and or 14.
And
We
9.
do.
Yep, and so now you are being charged as a property owner on ditch 12 and 14.
No, I
that outlet
understand what
benefit.
they are.
Yeah,
I'm just,
so-
it's just confusing that they weren't added into the repair.
And that
'Cause
was a
that's what it
mistake,
is.
because we didn't realize it was short. And the reason is because we had that notification issue like everyone said. So we had to update that amount that everyone was assessed to make sure that you had proper notice of your total cost.
So you didn't realize that outlet benefits had to be assessed?
It wasn't discovered that there was an issue until the Friday before the meeting. And once we did, we continued the hearing to allow for proper notification.
You know, I see the,
Dollars to this guy to figure that out?
well, we're not gonna get, I see the benefit to these county ditches. I just wish that it was more, what would you say, organized? Cause I mean, the outlet benefits were in the redetermination of benefits.
Right.
And us as homeowners, landowners, whatever, we've never dealt with this before. But we rely on people that are in the county board or the overviewers, the people that wrote up
Right.
the redetermination of benefits to know these things. And to me, for them not to be in the repair cost and have to send out a complete second notification for it was a misstep.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I think we concur with you.
Yep.
We don't like these missteps along the way either. It's frustrating us, and I think we voiced our opinion in the last meeting on when we had to postpone and continue this meeting. So, we get exactly what you're saying.
Anyone else?
Just to follow up with my questions before about the interest rates, that's part of the reason why I'm asking for a lower interest rate versus the prime right now, is because both parties have had fault, or not even fault, but both parties have had reasons on both sides of it to where it shouldn't all be put on just the landowners itself.
Maybe if I could, and while we're talking about that, I'd like to have some, information. What is the maximum amount of the payback period? Is it 10 years? Is it 20? And I don't want to get confused because some people will look at 20. There's 2 payments a year, May and November. So that's a 10-year
10-year
payback.
payment.
So I just want to make sure we're all crystal clear, but I don't know the answer. What is the maximum number of years we can allow for a payback?
All right, so there are different numbers for different types of ditch proceedings. For construction of a ditch, you get 20 years. For repairs, you get 10 or you get 15. And what determines whether you get 10 or 15 is whether or not the assessment is more than half of the benefits, or yes. Or if it's under half of the total benefits, then it can be 10. If it's over half of the total benefits, then it is 15. In this case, the total benefits are 1.3 million approximately. The total assessment is under half of that. So it's only 460,000 approximately. So that would not meet that threshold of that 50%, over 50%. So we would be limited to 10 years.
So by statute, we're limited to 10 years.
103E.731.
So then the question to follow up with that is the limited of being at 10 years, what goes on with the assessment of the maintenance? Is that separate?
Separate.
Because we're completely dealing with, we're gonna get hammered again on another bill.
That'll be separate.
That we're all gonna have to come up with.
That'll be separate. Anybody else? Roland, go ahead. Jared's got a mic for you there.
Yeah.
Has anybody figured out how much this is gonna cost, this assessment for the maintenance on this? There's gonna be a lot of maintenance on there. And according to the letters I got in the mail, or one letter, that when this ditch was to be completed, it would be completed so there would be access for the water to get into the ditch from both sides. That's not happening the way it is now. I got stuck with the four-wheeler just trying to look down there. And there was a big log laying in the grass that they just left. They never took care of it. So that cost is going to be quite a bit of an assessment when they come down to it, because the ground is not level. It isn't like, it's, according to the letter, it was going to be accessible water from both sides, and this is not happening.
Okay, and again, that's on CD 14, and so we're gonna need to make note of that because we have that hearing coming up in June. So once we can get out there this spring, the engineers are gonna have to take a look at that, see. So CD 14 is still open, if you will, as far as the contract. Anybody else?
My name's Jim Markford, 16661 65th Street Northeast, Oak Park. I got a couple questions. One is, on the redetermination of benefits, or, to appeal this, you said we only had 30 days to appeal this stuff. And that was, stated back, and I'm guilty, I didn't go to any of the meetings back in 2022 or whenever they were held. But if I'm correct, you said we only had 30 days to appeal that, right?
My understanding, Michelle, that's correct. You would have had 30 days to appeal from the time of the hearing.
Yes, 103E.091 dictates that.
So you don't have.
So my question is, how can we appeal something when we have no idea what our cost was gonna be? You gave us an estimated or a example, but then you come in 5 to 6 or 8 or 10 times higher if you're on 14. How are we supposed to appeal something? We have no idea what it's gonna be.
Well, I think there's two answers there maybe, Jim, is number one, the opportunity to appeal is different than what the potential repair was going to be. The example was listed as if the repair was 100,000. I don't think the viewers at that time would have known what the potential repair was going to be. So that's why they said on a $100,000 repair, this is the percentage. So obviously, if the repair costs 5 times that, that would be the bill. So there's kind of two different parts of that.
I understand that. So I got that letter in the mail, and for my farm, it said that mine would probably be at that rate, at 100,000, would be $6,000.
Yep.
So, and now I get an assessment for over $25,000, and, we don't have that kind of money in the budget. We're retired, and, my wife and I do not wanna go get a job so we can keep the farm. And I don't think we're alone with this crowd. I think there's a lot of people in this crowd are very upset with this assessment.
Yeah, really. I started looking for a job already. I'm 72 years old, I'm looking for a job.
Nick Schumacher, 7510 95th Avenue, Northeast Foley. Just got a question, again, about this determination of benefits. Didn't we put the cart in front of the horse? Shouldn't we have had an estimate of how much the ditch was gonna cost before they even decided who paid what? So people could get up and say, hey, I think we got a little bit of issue here. Ours initially was 11,000 some odd dollars. Now, ditch 14, it's $80,815.36. Since the last meeting, we received some more significant pieces of paper that tallied up to $19,991.90. Plus, another little bill from Hellman's to dress up the very little bit of the ditch that they had to touch, because they said they had to make it look like we did something on your property, because ours was maintained by herself. That bill was $2,510. So, a total of $103,317.26. Break that up on 146.19 acres. That's $706 an acre, which is total, you know what? If anybody in this room agrees that that is not, stand up. Cause that ain't right. That's highway robbery. How do you even move forward on a project without knowing the cost? You have a percentage, but percentage of what? Who cares? I mean, there's no number here. Why wasn't the estimate of the ditch first priority? It's gonna cost X amount of dollars. Then we get these H2 reviewers come out. Okay, here's a redetermination of benefits. This is what you gain, this is what you gain, this is what the dollar is. Rather than say, oh, you pay 15%, but well, if ditch costs $100,000, well, that ain't too terrible. But now we're at $1 million some dollars. That's a big difference.
You wanna hand the mic to Michelle? Looks like she's looking to answer.
I would also remind everyone that technically the repair notices were sent out, meetings were held, and the total cost was, you were given notice of that at the time of the repair being ordered. That would have been the time to contest whether or not the order. Okay, it was published notice.
We didn't get it.
Was it mailed? I just got one this last one.
2022.
We mailed.
To our doorstep. Delivered.
No.
Oh.
If you are on ditch 9, you should have received notice of the repair
We never had nothing.
hearings, and they would have been published.
We got
Again, not everybody reads the paper either.
We got 9 people, they never got the other ones. But ditch 14, did anybody on ditch 14 receive a letter that we're gonna be paying this X amount of dollars for ditch number 9?
No.
Did anybody get a letter saying, hey, ditch 14 is gonna cost this much money before we even start the project?
No.
Exactly, what happened?
I'm not sure who's the best to talk about that, Joe or Michelle, I'm not sure.
Notice should have been sent and published for notice to the public regarding that repair petition and the hearings held and what that total cost was going to be. And then it was ordered, and you did not appeal
So
that.
when did they come up with the estimate for the total cost? Did he have it up on the board?
Monty, is there a way that we can figure out if that was gone, if that has gone out? The notices. How do we figure out if the notices went out? Cause there are a lot of people saying,
Well, the notices would come out of the auditor treasurer's office. I'd have to ask Christine to respond to that question, yeah.
okay. She's gonna go look.
My God. We never got it.
Okay, my name's Michael Holzum,
Yeah.
and I'm at 8300 170th Avenue Northeast. And I'm assessed now between these two projects about I suppose it'd be $9,000 for about 25 acres of land that's tillable, because I've sold the rest of it to Kelly Anderson. And that's probably the mix-up why I didn't get a letter. I got the letter for this 9 repair, and I found about the rest of it from Kelly Anderson, cause he rents my land right now. And he told me about the rest of this, that I didn't have any idea what was going on. But the other thing I wanna make clear here is when I purchased that farm, because of the way the roads were done at the time and the culverts were laid in, all the water from Oak Park ends up on my farm. And the culverts wouldn't handle the water. So I went through a ditching project and I enlarged the culverts and I ditched across my land, which the ditch was already there. I deepened it a little bit, I put the culverts in, and it flows across the road. I paid for all that expense. And it doesn't go to the ditch, I had enough fall, and the people didn't want me to ditch to the ditch, so I didn't ditch to the ditch. It just goes onto a meadow and that's it. And now I'm assessed, and I'm retired, I can't afford $11,000, or $9,000, whatever it's gonna be. It just ain't in my books.
I do have a question about notification. I did get a letter from Chris Bird and it had the same slide that was up on, Joe, when he did his presentation. And it says there's part of ditch 9 was $2,633.80. The cost to publish notices in the county's official newspaper. Since the county ditches became an issue and the redetermination of benefits in 2022, I've tried to find anything in the Benton County News about any kind of a notice, about any meeting. And I live up in Baxter, I get the Benton County News weekly, and I read it every week. I have never, ever seen a notice for any kind of a public hearing about a ditch authority meeting or an assessment meeting in the Benton County News. I've tried to look at ditch authority minutes on your website, and they are just about impossible to find. So as far as public notification, that's something else that maybe should be a little better.
Well, Frank, I would have to say it'd be pretty easy to find out if we made notice publicly. I mean, we'd have to pay the bill to the Benton County News, so.
Yeah, we have a
That
contract.
should be easy to find out.
Yep, and we have contract with them year by year.
Do we have a way to verify that publication?
Oh, yeah.
We receive an affidavit of publication from the newspaper when those get published.
So-
Is it in the legal section or where is it?
It would be in the legals, yes.
It would
Yep.
be in the legal.
Yep.
Do we have those affidavits here?
They're probably in the files, so.
Do you have the affidavits by chance, Christine?
I have the affidavit of mailing that the notices went to the property owners on the 14th of April
Of,
23.
For-
And that was for the May 2nd, 23 public hearing on the repair report for Benton County Ditch 9.
and then there should be an affidavit of the public notice in the paper.
Right.
Okay.
What was them dates again, Christine?
April
April 14th,
of 23.
2023, for the May 2nd, 2023 public hearing.
I'm Leroy Jacobson. I live on 17131 75th Street, Northeast Oak Park. I have owned property on this since 1973. That's 52 years. I paid over $1 million in taxes to this county. And I couldn't afford to keep it all, so I sold some to my son and my son-in-law. So I'm down to 80 acres now. I have no income other than from 48 acres and a little social security. And my 80 acres pay my taxes and insurance. So I gotta live on $1,800 a year. Or how am I gonna get a loan that'll pay this off? They won't give me a loan, cause I don't have no income. Tell me that. Ain't that beating up us old, that made this county? I built schools, I built the part of the courthouse, helped build a jail. But that don't count, right? You give a hell if you kick the old people in the ass, don't you? So, and I can't figure out why these people can drain swamps into my property. I own, between me and my son-in-law, we own property on both sides of 9 and 14. So this land is all on 9 and 14, so we pay for both of these. There's swamps drained in from by 9, which don't have to pay nothing hardly, $100 and some. And also, all the swamp from Oak Park runs through my property, through my a little bit of pasture, in my ditch. There's no septic thing, so my water in my ditch in the spring of the year smells like sewage. Believe it or not, if you wanna come out there and smell it, when the frost all goes out, they have the sewers running right into the ditch, they have to be. And they pay like $100 and some each household. So that's it.
Anyone else? Mike?
I want to pretend to be government for a while. I'm gonna be polite and remove my hat. It's coffee time, isn't it? Mike Radko, 11609 45th Street, Northeast Foley. I do not live in these watersheds. I have had the opportunity to rent ground. I think I made a profit, put food on the table for my family. But anyways, I'm here to speak as the county as a whole. We have a county problem. Through past county commissioners and as Benton County residents, we have been neglected of county maintenance. It's a broken record, I don't need to repeat it. Through this neglect, our landowner assessments for maintenance have come through. I'm tired of the ignorance of the county officials, the dictatorship that we have forced to be put on us to where we need to put our driveways, the depth we need to dig a ditch, and the size of culvert we need to put in when you don't know the flow. The unnecessary hierarchy of agencies created unnecessary costs. Here we are today. It's time to admit it's a county problem. I'm asking you to refer this to committee and make us, as a county, responsible for this assessment. Not all these landowners, us as a county. Yes, as a county to pay for this and not tyranny forced on these landowners. I'm sorry if it takes any government person off the hook that's done wrong, but I think the county should absorb this. We pay luxury tax, we go out to eat for new roads. I paid them many a times. I've never traveled any of those roads yet. It's the county problem. The county can pay for it.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? Anybody else online, on the phone, another opportunity?
And just a reminder, if you're online, you need to unmute yourself if you wanna.
Looks like Joe and maybe Jim would like to speak again. Jared, thank you.
This is Joe Fisher, 16794 75th Street, Oak Park. And I have to agree that the county has sure been trying to screw us over. We have a county engineer who has an assistant, who has a budget to hire people to help him. You don't need to hire outside consultants that pay him big money for how many years already? You know, they've been working on it since 2014 when they started this project about the ditches and talking about it. And it takes this long, and why isn't the township in here too? Because they are supposed to have the maps for the ditches. They had them years ago. And all of a sudden, we have to have people from out of our area come in here. And I'm sure when they go on their computer and they can talk smart and charge big money and keep the ball going for how many years now? How many last meetings have we been to? Here, this assessment on all the property that I pay taxes on, that's 400 acres, 200 acres of cropland, $65,645. Now, if you add that up with the $8,000 a year I've been paying and more, and taxes are gonna go up for sure, how are you supposed to pay? That land will not produce a net income enough to pay the taxes. For years and years, I've worked my butt off to get the farm debt paid off. I only got it done a few years ago, and I had to put the rest of the loan from mortgage from the farm onto my house. Just got it paid off about 5 years ago. And now we're gonna start this again? You're trying to put the people off the land, which you already are on the last straw. These government farmers running down the road with 10-ton and 20-ton tractors and machinery behind them, taking up the roads, busting them up. They don't go like the small farmers and farm their land. They go 5-10 miles down the road and back and forth all day with wagons and manure spreaders. And a manure spreader, 800 bushel manure spreader, and manure weighs 80 pounds to a bushel. Can you imagine the road? For goodness sakes, this kind of money in 10 years that I've paid, it's more money than I could make on that farm, farming the hell out of it, because you can't grow corn on there that gets ripe. We have no cattle to feed silage to. And all the ground is actually good for now is for hay, because it costs too much to put a crop in when you gotta pay the chemical companies for the seed even. People pay $300 a bag for corn and then fertilizer. You know, these government farmers, they don't help the county. That's not to, they buy their seed in another county, they sell in another county, they buy the machinery even in another county. And then we're supposed to take care of their roads and pay their bills. It's time, I'll tell you what, somebody dropped the ball here. And the county engineer should have a comeuppance too. He should do his job. He's getting paid for it, not hire his colleague buddies and stuff as consultants. I don't know what's gonna happen, but you know, when this last crop of farmers, so-called, are done, there is no more farming. You're gonna be well, you just like Foley's a ghost town, that's what's gonna happen to you. Oh. They took the creamery out of Foley, and that was the downgrading started, when they took the creamery out of Foley. The farmers made this town and this county. And now we got drugs uptown, that's what we got for town. It's something else. When you can't think about taking care of the people, and the liberals in this state, they used to tax and spend. Now we are spending and taxing. It's not right at all. And now we got a governor that stole all our money we were supposed to get back from the surplus. He gave it away to all kinds of organizations for his political gain. And now he's talking about running for president yet? And even part of that COVID money, it's all secret. You know, we were supposed to get paid for essential workers. By the time we got done, we got less than 10 cents an hour. Because he used that money up, it's all sticking to his fingers and his buddies. And then when we were supposed to get the rebate for the surplus, after he gave it all to the DNR and all these political factions, gave him money. Now, why can't we get some money from the DNR or the conservation to pay for these ditches? You know, it's awful. You think about what they're doing to us in our country. There's no freedom anymore. When you're gonna move people off their land because you just decided to spend. You could have dug these ditches for a lot less money. And they dug the ditches before without consultants and computers and airplanes. All they needed was people to walk the ditch. And when they started on this project, people didn't have jobs. They could have hired some people on minimum wage. They would have been happy to work for $7, $8 an hour to help him carry his stakes and his transit. You could have had them ditches mapped out and figured out. Engineers have done it for years. And now we gotta hire consultants. Keep the family in the money. I don't know. You better look to the state or somebody to help pay for this. Now, the state runs all the water from the county ditch, not the county, the state highway ditch, goes into 14. Why aren't they paying for about 90% of that part of 14? And besides that, you know, when they built 23 in the 50s, them ditches were dug deeper and upset the natural flow of water. But they decided they'd just run it all through our land, you know. And then the neighbors all blocked the ditches up, so the water's back at the home farm there. Half of it's grown into brush, you better take that.
Mr. Chair? Went so long it was off. Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Commissioner Benton.
How many here know past commissioner in the last 100 years? Past commissioner. Yeah. I hope you give these guys the act too, because 100 years of not being taken care of, and this board is tasked with that. 100 years. Imagine if these ditches would have been fixed 30 years ago, how reasonable they would have been done.
So why can't you spread this cost over a little larger part of the population rather than just a few of us?
That's right.
Everybody.
It's been 100 years. and
Well,
farms.
from that standpoint, I wanted to start with this, and maybe our county attorney can fill everybody in. But we are dictated by statute on what we can do, everything is dictated down. We got two things we can do, and that's what is the interest payment and how long, and even how long you heard tonight is not up to us.
You know what the main word is there? Dictator.
Yeah. And it's not by this board.
This is not a democratic country anymore, the way this is being run. You're running, like Joe said, you're gonna run us all off our farm.
There's about that expense, I did all that ditching, over a mile of ditches, and cleaned that all out with the culverts and everything for about $10,000 back then.
Right.
Level the ditch banks and everything.
When I sat at the county trying to clean these ditches, why was I told no?
Yeah.
When was this?
I've cleaned a ton of feeders to that ditch 14. I do it for rent. I get, land rent agreement on. I couldn't touch 14.
Yeah,
I
you
would've
can't.
cleaned it for a mile and a half for rent. That's it. So why couldn't I touch it?
Then you would have needed to bid, so anyone, yep, no,
Why couldn't I do, why wouldn't the county let me do exactly what was done? We cleaned up the trees, we take it.
I got permission, I cleaned mine twice.
and I don't know what previous county engineers or county boards did, but there is a process that we have to follow for cleaning. We do have to go out for bids, we have to have qualified contractors doing it, we have to follow the as constructed plans. So that's the reason we have followed the process that we have.
So then why weren't we notified of this time? And I know you said we were.
Directed to.
Okay, well, okay, why weren't we notified of the cost then? Now, we said we were, she's saying that we are notified of the cost, and we would've had a chance to appeal it.
We never had nothing until we got the letter here saying it's due.
The only cost that I got was when I got back from vacation, show up to this meeting, cause this is what you're gonna be assessed.
Well, and I think a part of the,
It's too late to appeal.
I think part of the struggle is, and Jim, I'm sorry I'm gonna pick on you, and I'm not saying that this happened with the rest of you, but Some people chose to attend the meetings, some didn't. They ignored them, they didn't open up their packets, they didn't read the notice in the paper, they didn't look at the redetermination of benefits. And I, for one, would love to know, how do we get people to do that and get involved in that? I mean, we can't hog tie you.
Require a signature on anything over $1,000. If you don't have a signature, they don't know. They're not-
We've talked about that. It's called certified mail.
It's gotta get put out for bids. So if there's a bid put out and it was paid out, I guess, Mark, what's the question on it?
Well, this is a prime example of the county dropping the ball. This is a prior assessment way back in 2005 on a property owner's assessment on their taxes. It was petitioned in 2000, probably for the repair of 9 and 14. There's charges on here that people in 14 got assessed for back then. Some of the work was done. Some of the property owners say that they paid their portion for that ditch to get cleaned, which they probably did. But how come there was over $7,000 assessed to these people in watershed on 14? The process was started, but this is a prime example of the county dropping the ball, and they should be held responsible for this. Because everybody in that watershed, on 14 anyways that I know, was charged for this. It was advertised in the paper, they were charged for that, there's other charges that are on here. So the process was started, but the county dropped the ball. This is a prime example why the county should be held responsible for a portion of this bill. This assessment.
Mark, I gotta admit, I can't answer that specific question from 20 years ago without digging into that. I have no idea.
2005.
Well, no, I know you guys can't answer that, but this is a prime example of what was going on back then.
And to your point though about asking it to share it countywide, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, I don't think by statute we can even do that. Because statute dictates that the benefiting landowners will pay the bill. That's statute.
Okay,
That's not something
but-
the ditch authority made up.
All right.
Why am I paying?
So then where did this money go then? Because the landowners that the ditch runs through, they claimed, or they paid for that. Where did this money go? Where did this money go?
Well, if you're saying it was repaired or maintained, I'm assuming that's where the money went to pay for that.
But what was maintained, where?
Yeah.
Because
Was it-
Eric
is it-
Jacobson and Keith Bramprick paid for their portion of the ditch to get cleaned. So you're telling me south of 52, just cleaning that short stretch on County Ditch 14 where it meets 9 is gonna cost over $7,000? I talked to Dollingers, which they're the ones that did the excavating, but his nephew runs the business, which he does all the ditch cleaning for Morrison County. And I told him what was going on, and he said he heard what was going on in this county, and he said it's ridiculous what you guys created. When stuff is done in Morrison County and other counties, they don't hire all these other firms to come in to basically rape the taxpayers. That's what happened here. When you got a county engineer right there, and then Morrison County's engineer, what they do is they just walk the ditch and they figure it out. You can figure out where the ditch bottom is. You don't need to hire all these firms. As far as hiring H2O overviewers, what a joke that is. You know what? That might work in southern Minnesota when them ditches been established, how many damn years ago? And everything is tiled. That probably works fine for their maintenance cost. There's nothing established in this county on these ditches. So that's bogus to even bring them in here and force this upon us. Yes, the ditches needed to get cleaned, and yes, it's nice to have the ditches cleaned, but there's a lot of extra expense that was created here that is just ridiculous, and I think the county should be responsible for it.
Yeah, the only thing I can answer to that, Mark, that I'm aware of is, again, I believe statute dictates to the ditch authority that we have to provide overviewers to redetermine the benefits. I believe
No.
statute calls that out.
No, I've already asked Morrison County, and I asked them, cause that's the argument, that's it. I mean, that was one of the first questions you had. Well, how do we figure out who pays what in the ditch? So I went to Morrison County and I asked them, and what they told me is when that ditch is established, there's bylaws. And in them bylaws, it is where it states who pays what and who's in the watershed.
But would you also agree, though, that those benefits have probably changed over the last 100 years with differing landowners and different use of property?
Well, yeah,
I mean, that's why-
I'm not disagreeing, the landowners change all the time.
I think
But
that's why
there
there's a
again, too,
redetermination.
that's what the recorder's office is supposed to do, and the assessor's office is supposed to, figure that out too. But once again, that's part of their job, but now you sub this out and then pass it on to us.
I would be willing to bet, knowing the state of Minnesota, is that there's probably new laws on that since that time period. And
Well, then how are other counties getting away with it then?
I can't answer
Tell
that.
me.
No.
And it's funny because they usually bring Rinky Noonan on right away, and then you guys bring him on the day that we're gonna close out the meeting. What's the county attorney do? I mean, this is ridiculous.
And I agree with you, things change in 100 years. Where's assessment, he had a good point, where's assessment, Minnesota State Highway 23's watershed, how much they paying?
I believe the road authorities were assessed separately,
Is it
township and county.
public knowledge, did anybody
Yeah,
see it?
absolutely. It's absolutely public knowledge.
Like in these, the state of Minnesota's got stuff in here.
Maywood.
Yeah, the townships.
I would also like to add, I think there should be a list, you don't have to print the names, but I think us landowners, property owners, whether it be ditch 9, 14, 12, whatever, we should be able to see the numbers. That we don't have to see who's paying what, cause I can tell you right now, what Schumachers are paying and what I'm paying, just in section 23 and 14, it's well over, well, just 3 property owners there is damn near 150,000. Just in section 14 and 23, just with 3 people. So, okay, so how many miles is number 14 ditch? And you got close to 150,000 just right there? So, I mean, if that's what this is, it would be nice to see, but we probably.
It's all public.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, where do we, I mean,
You can have that.
so is this just 9? Well, I would like, I mean.
This is 9, but
Yeah.
available on
Yeah.
any day.
All right, so if I come to the assessor's office, I can get it or what?
No.
It'd
Highway.
be, no, it'd be, Christine's.
I mean, maybe that should be put on the website where the ditch information is, but just black out the property owner's name so that we can see the numbers, so that they add up. I mean,
It doesn't matter. It's still public.
Public information.
okay, well, it don't then, I mean, that'd be nice
Yep.
for us to see.
And the auditor's office would have it.
Okay,
Yep.
all right,
Per
But you can
ditch.
have that one tonight.
all right, thank you.
Anyone else? Leroy, I saw you stand up again.
They did?
There's 320 acres. I owned for many years. It got so I couldn't pay the taxes on it. My son-in-law wanted to build a new house on part of it, cause I wasn't getting homestead rights on 160, cause back then wasn't homestead rights. So I paid, 3 years, I paid 3 times as much taxes on it. So then I gave each of them, cause I made money by giving them each a gift of each at 40. Well, then after that, they bought the other ones from me, but if you're talking about land, between this 320 acres, we have 100 acres of farmland. And we pay 123,000 for this ditch.
That's not
We-
fair. It's not fair to make the productive ag land to pay for the majority of the bill. It's not fair.
We completely understand that. We really do. Wholeheartedly, this is a profit center for us up here, the county. We're here to facilitate it. And believe me, we'd rather be county commissioners versus ditch authority. 100%. When I put in for county commissioner, nowhere did it say I'm a ditch authority person. And I'll tell you, this has been the most painful thing that I've had in 5 years, is these ditches. And if you hear what all the other commissioners going through the state are going through, it's
Same
exactly
thing.
this. And you guys are 100% right. You can tax right out of your properties. It's just not here. What do we do? It's coming above. It's not, if we don't act on these things, if we don't act on these petitions, we get held responsible personally, not as a board, personally. So if we don't act in appropriate way and move these along, the only way to stop these petitions or stop these, costs from happening is stop petitions from happening.
There you go. That's,
Hiring all these other companies that.
well, no, that doesn't, we didn't start hiring the other companies, because of all the commissioners up here, I've been here the longest, and we didn't start until we had a petition from a landowner that was in the southeast part of the county. He came before us and said we needed to clean, I think we were 13 and 15. So we did them, and we didn't have no determination of benefits. We went out and looked at the ditch, it was a mess, and we had the public hearings, nobody showed up. And so when we went to clean it, it was benefited to all the redetermination of benefits. Well, I never even knew that, the county board was the ditch authority at that point in time. And that individual's no longer farming, it was paid for by the landowners and that. But we couldn't go back we went to ditch authority, we went to ditch conferences like we've been having, and you cannot ignore a petition. But when we have the public hearings about the petition, and we need more input at the public hearings prior to cleaning and prior to awarding stuff, because after we listen and nobody shows up, we award the contract because we have a
Valid
legal
petition.